I bought my car, and I bought a car for £450, and I insured it for £2,500.
Oh,
Bro, do you know what mine is?
I've been feeling ways on ways of positivity all day.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to the Waves of Positivity show, to our brand new series, Route to the Righteous Character. In this series, we're going to be talking about specific characteristics every single episode with a special guest. These characteristics are things that we believe are needed for every single person to become successful. We are Waves of Positivity. We're a group of three lads. Myself, Sully, we got the other Sully, and we got Adil. And our main goal is to help young people make positive lifestyle choices. Just to get straight into it today, we've got our special guest, Rizwan. He's a good friend of ours. And we brought him for a specific reason today because we believe that he can deliver a lot of value on the specific characteristic we're going to be covering today. So if you'd like to give a quick introduction for yourself, please, Rizwan.
I appreciate it, and thank you very much for bringing me on. So myself, Rizwan is my name. I'm 29 years old, soon to be 30, and I've generally throughout my life I've always been helping businesses for free, and then I just recently started a business, so I'm helping many businesses within Leicester and within the UK actually grow their business and save them time and save them money. But that's me in a nutshell for what I do at the moment.
Thank you very much. So the characteristic that we're going to be talking about today is decisiveness. And the reason we brought you on today is because that's the quality that we feel shines through the most throughout your entirety. Like the work that you do when you're speaking to us, when you're working with us, or whoever you work with, is done in a very calculated manner. So is there kind of like a quick definition? What is decisiveness and why is it important?
So for me, decisiveness is basically making a decision as quickly as you possibly can in the most effective way as you possibly can. That's as simple as it can get.
Efficiency and effectiveness, basically.
100%.
Okay, I want to go straight into it. I want to know how you have sort of built yourself up to have such a good level of decisiveness. How have you come to a level where you can make these snap decisions that are effective and efficient?
So I don't know if it's a good trait or a bad trait, but something that I really do on a regular basis is I make sure that every single one of my decisions is logical. So by making sure that all my decisions are logical, it just forces me to think about the good and the bad, but also the will I regret this in the future. And by doing that, and doing that in a very short space of time, because I've done it for so many different decisions over time, with so many different situations, with other people's livelihoods being in the matter and in something that we actually need to check as well, it's like automatically I'm now able to actually make them quickly. But to be honest, at the beginning, I made a lot of wrong decisions. Even till today, you will still make wrong decisions on a regular basis. But the fact is that as long as you're willing to make that decision and take that decision and actually move forward, you'll be able to then recorrect it and change it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I give you like an analogy for it, like let's say for example when you drive, all three of us drive, right? All four of us. Well, three of you drive, right? So yeah, definitely. So all four of us drive, and when all four of us drive, we're not making a decision of how many degrees to turn the steering wheel before we actually take a left or take a right or go on the motorway, etc. What we're doing is we're doing what we think is right, and then we're slightly adjusting. That's how decisions are made. But as soon as you start thinking, I need to know exactly how many degrees to actually turn the steering wheel, you immediately start getting overwhelmed, because if you're wrong with that one decision, you're going into a tree or wherever else it might be. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
Nice, it's a sick analogy though.
Yeah, no, I think what the thing I took away from that was like your decision is not just an impulse thing. It's not just something. It's not a decision that you make in 1 second. It's a constant thing. So once you've made your initial decision, there's a chain of other decisions that need to be made thereafter.
100%.
But that first initial one is arguably the most important one, because that's going to set off the chain reaction essentially.
100%. And the reality is that for every decision, no matter which decision you look at, there's always going to be a level of how much you could be worse off if you make the wrong one, right? So if that's the case, all I do personally is I just set a deadline for myself. And by that deadline, I need to make that decision with whatever information I've got, because the reality is you're never going to have all of the information. Never. So set a realistic deadline and just take it as soon as you get to that time.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really important.
It's like Richard Branson's famous saying,
like if someone offers you a job and you don't know how to do it, you take the job and then you just learn how to do it. So with all your decisions, just make the decision you've got to make that you think is right. Go with your gut sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, that's with like, very important with opportunities. If opportunities presented to yourself, I think, I'm the kind of person that would always grab it and then think about the solution afterwards.
Puts everything on his plate, doesn't it?
Put it on my plate, that exactly. So I want to ask you, what benefits has it brought to you, and what benefits are there in general for being able to make clear-cut decisions?
Okay, so if we start with how it's benefited me, if I talk about one of my first decisions that a lot of people may not know about is All Communications Network, so network marketing company. You guys may have heard of it, you may have not heard of it. There's lots of pros, lots of cons of doing that sort of work. But at that moment in time, I was desperate for income. I was unsure how to make income. And so what did I do? I took it with both hands. And when I do that, I then basically learn and learn and learn. And although I did that for 4 years, and yes, I made money, and yes, I lost money. And by losing money, I mean put in too much time for the amount of money that you're actually receiving. Over that time, I was able to build up a skill set. But I promise you, there was people who saw it on the same day as me, and 4 years later, they're still thinking about doing it. Who was better off?
You, 100%. You learned that lesson. I think that's a key thing to touch upon as well. Even though you make the wrong decision, there's still opportunity there. 100%. It's just a matter of searching for it and finding for it. And I think you guys can agree as well. You know, we've all made those decisions, and then you're left with a scenario or a situation where you can either let it eat you up, or you can try find the benefit in it. I don't know if any of you two have any examples you would share.
Just touching up on what you said, you're never going to know about anything without doing it. It's like, for the first person who ever found out about fire, he was like, am I going to know if it's hot without touching it? So he touches the fire, learns that it burns him, and he never touches the fire again. From since then, no one else touches fire. You've got to always do things in order to learn from them.
Yeah, 100%. I would say also, like, when you make a decision and it turns out to be a bad one, like in your scenario, you could say it had a bad one. For me, myself, when I joined a network marketing company, like, you learn so much. You learn so much, but you're vulnerable. Like, it's the same thing as you, 18, hungry for money, part-time student, like, it happens. And I feel like me and Essay were in the same one, but we learned so much from it. But there were also drawbacks. But what I'd like to mention about decisions is, as you said, you took it with both hands. I went in with both feet. And doing that, when you make a bad decision, you also have the opportunity to make another decision of how to get out of that bad decision.
This is what I wanted to come to as well, is that what happened with me at network marketing was I felt like I was married to that company, in the sense where if I'm married to my wife, right? And if someone else was to say, oh yeah, you check this girl out, my answer would be, I'm insulted. Right? Because why are you showing me someone else when you know I'm married? So if someone else would show me any other opportunity, it would be in my head, well, why are you showing me anything else? Because I'm married to this. And it was I had this mentality of, I'm doing this, so I don't care until I die, I'm doing this, if that makes sense. But we have to realize as people that a decision can be changed. And from realizing that decision, from actually putting the pros and the cons and actually setting myself a deadline and things like that, I was then able to actually come out of it. But without doing that, do
you know how I know when someone delivers value is when he says something and all three of us like, yeah.
No, but it's a key thing for people to understand. No matter what decision you make, you can always turn back on it.
Yeah.
People believe once I've made a decision, I can never go back. But you're allowed to. There's no shame in going back. It actually shows more strength when you can say I was wrong and I'm changing my mind.
100%. There's a difference, obviously, of not keeping your word. That's very, very, very different. But I'm sure you're not alluding to that.
Yeah.
As long as you're keeping your word, obviously, as long as you're honest, etc., and you genuinely have just felt differently, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
I wanna go a bit deeper, and if you guys don't mind, I wanna ask all three of you.
Who's that going deep, man?
That's you know how I go. I wanna ask you guys.
That way, completely different environments, right?
I want to ask you guys if you're happy to share one of your worst decisions that you've ever made, and also one of the best decisions you've ever made. Because I want people to see or feel the emotion, and hopefully they realize that, you know, every single one, no matter how good or bad you are, you make good decisions and bad decisions, but we can make something good out of either way.
Can I make a statement though, just based off of that question? What if you don't feel like any of the decisions you've made in life are bad, like it to someone else it might be bad, but for me, all the decisions I made in life are good.
The experience for me.
I can't think of a bad experience, if I can say that.
So I get where you're coming from. It's like that thing where you're like, okay, there was something good that came out of it, but in that moment there was some sort of regret, or there was
My mind is too positive.
I can give one from a business perspective, just so it's like transparent. So starting off with a bad decision, I would say, we were just speaking about this beforehand, but when you start off your own business, you would like take anyone and everyone on board, and no matter what price they would pay, you would take them on just to build your portfolio. And the bad decision was taking anyone and everyone at any price and knowing that they're a complete different person and you're wasting time, energy, skills, everything, just wasting so much. And alhamdulillah, learning from that decision, you turn into a better person, you increase your prices, you choose who you want, kind of thing. Good decisions I've made in business is being 100% transparent. If I know a client has a budget higher than what he can spend with me, I'll tell him, no, you don't need to spend that much, spend this much. And when you build transparency, you have more rapport and more trust with that client and with your network. So those are my two best decisions and worst decisions I've had within business.
Yeah.
Why don't you go first before us?
Like me?
Yeah.
No, I'm going live.
You can't pose a question and answer it.
Okay, fair enough. No, fair enough. So for me, I won't say it's the worst decision, but I've spoke about it lightly to you guys before, is getting my car at so quickly. So I was so desperate to drive. I didn't need to drive. Like, public transport was fine for me, cycling was fine for me, walking was fine for me. But I just was desperate. I just passed. I was like 18 years old. I was like, I need to get behind a wheel. And so I bought my car, and I bought a car for £450, and I insured it for £2,500.
Oh.
Bro, do you know what mine was? Spent £1,000 on the car, £3,900.
Oh my! You make my decision seem like the best decision I've ever made.
Bro.
How old are you when you did yours, if you don't mind me asking?
18 or just
You're
turned
both
18.
the same age, okay. I was about to say, he could afford it, but you couldn't.
Nah, bro, I couldn't afford it, man.
No, literally, it was in the moment. It was like, yes, I've got my car, I can drive. And then when I'm seeing that £200 or £250 come out of the bank every month, I'm like, what the hell have I done?
Forget that. I ripped my car off and I called insurance and I was like, I want to cancel my insurance. And they were like, you can't, because you just ripped your car off, we just paid you out for the car. I didn't know you are actually allowed to cancel it, yeah? So I carried on paying them and I couldn't afford another car. So I was paying insurance £350 a month and catching taxis to work every single day. Bro, I was broke, like beyond broke.
Given your bad decisions, it's like a good experience for these even 18-year-olds that want to get a car, learn from you. So it's always a good time to sell something.
Bro, my biggest mistake was I worked in my dad's factory for like a long, like the whole summer basically, yeah. Saved up about £600 to £1,000. That same summer before college started, I just went out and bought like 6 to 10 outfits. Spent all of it.
I used to looking fly.
I knew he would
I'm the
come
kind
to
of
you.
guy, bro.
He would
Listen,
come to you.
I like cars, man.
Nah, bro, it's wrong, man. It's not good. It's not good, man. But yeah, that's my worst. My best decision, I'd say, is buying the Honda Civic that I've got, which is only £3,000, because I was like, I need to make sure that I do not spend above my means and my money goes specifically towards business now.
Yeah.
Good, man.
Because it's
Good.
so easy to be like, there's this money, I could get this, and this is going to give you status, this is going to give you this is going to give you this. But now, you have to...
Asset over liability.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the better decisions that I've made it's a decision that everyone around me thought, oh, what is this kid doing? Like, he's such a donut. But after I finished college, I took a gap year. All my friends went to uni. I had good grades, GCSEs and A-levels. I could have easily done an engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, anything really. But I took a gap year because I was so confused. I knew, okay, like, till this moment in time, engineering is what I want to do. But it was kind of like, you got the knowledge, you got the grades, you do engineering. And I was like, nah, I'm going to take a gap year. I'm going to try and just figure myself out. And I didn't do anything astronomical in the gap year. What did I do? I just worked as an admin and I became a PT and I slowly found myself. In that gap year, I found myself. I really, truly believe I found myself. So that for me is the best decision. Although on the outside, people might have seen it as a bad decision and might have not known the fruits that have come from it. But for me, that's the best decision I've made, I think. One of the best.
I agree. All day, every day. That's a great decision, man, because too many people rush into everything.
Yeah.
And the fact that you took your time Because even my cousin just rang me the other day. He's thinking about going to uni, and he's like, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "If you don't know what you want to do, and your dad's saying go to uni, and you want to go to uni, no problem, go for it. But in that entire first year of you being at uni, you just need to determine the job that you're looking at the end, is it something that you actually want to do or not? Go work for free for that person, for someone who would do that job, go sit around them, etc. But you need to understand, uni, you don't need to stay all 3 years. Just it's the same thing as what we said before. Just because you made the decision to go to uni, you don't need to finish it. Just do what's best for yourself and understand yourself.
Do you know how, just off topic, you know how you see someone who's dropped out of uni or someone who's gone through a divorce, and we look down on them so badly, but do you know when you think about it, it's such a brave decision. Like
100%.
Me not going uni is against the grain, but for someone to go to uni for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then to come away from it and say that's not for me, or be married for 5 years, whatever, and say this isn't for me, it's not working out for me, that's even more courageous.
Yeah, 100%.
And them people, I take my hats off, because you've truly evaluated your situation, like you've said, and you've made a decision to kind of reverse or take a step in the right direction, basically.
100%. Because otherwise, later on, what you're going to do, you're going to regret it.
Exactly.
You just have to make decisions based on, in 5 years from now, or 10 years, or 25, or whenever, am I going to regret this decision?
Yeah.
And I think since the car situation, like that was a pivotal moment in my life when I bought the £3,000 car rather than spending a lot more. That was from now on, I'm only making decisions that will I regret this in the future, based on the information I have now. There's always going to be more information. There's always going to be something that you might make a wrong decision, but I still won't regret it. Do you get what I mean?
No. Yeah, I 100% get it, man.
So, yeah, it's important.
What's one of the best decisions you've made in your life, you think?
I think it's that. It's
that
personally.
car.
Yeah.
So your worst decision was...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my worst decision was to do with cars. Because the thing is, once you realise that you don't need to spend out of your means, because it does not matter what you have in material possessions, then you realise that your life is yours now.
Yeah.
You're not doing something for someone else anymore.
As Muslims as well, we're taught that like you spend on what Allah has given you by rizq. If you're rich, then you spend like that, and if you're poor, you don't spend like you're rich. Or if you're middle class, you don't spend like you're
proportionate.
Yeah, like you have to like you genuinely need to spend what you can afford. If Allah's given someone else more money than you, He's giving it to them, not to you, and you have to accept that. And that's the difference between you. You live up to your means.
And it doesn't mean that I judge people who go on finance or they spend out of their means, etc. Because everyone's got their own journey.
Yeah, 100%.
But the reality is that once you do realise that you can actually budget and you can actually reduce your expenses, etc., that other pot of money gives you so much satisfaction. You know this as well because you've been tracking for time. I don't know if you guys track. But once you have that pot of money and you've paid off your debts, etc., and you've got that bit where you're thinking, okay, this is going to do X, Y, and Z, it gives you so much liberation, honestly.
Yeah, I agree, man. Adam, do you have anything to share then?
The best decision I've made is probably starting Ways of Positivity with you two brothers.
That's very
amazing. It's probably one of the best decisions. I can't even talk anymore. One of the best decisions I've made in my life, and one of my worst decisions I'd have to probably say would be getting fat. Yeah, being a fat kid.
Allowing yourself to go kind of off the rails, shall we say?
No, when I was younger, I used to comfort eat rather than battle with my problems. So doing that comfort eating, as much as it's benefited me now and allowed me to make the right decisions, that probably have to be one of my worst decisions in life, because comfort eating is not the way to go.
Do you have any advice for someone that comfort eats like myself? Genuinely.
If you're comfort eating, I'd say sit down with yourself. I do this regularly now. Just sit down with yourself for 10 minutes and understand what's going wrong in my life, what's going right in my life, and actually tackle the things going on in your mind rather than trying to ignore them with the
cookies.
With the food that you're eating.
Okay, so we've kind of covered, how advantageous it is to have these decisive abilities, and we've also touched upon our personal experiences. But I think with everything we talk about, we always need to cover the negative and also the root causes. If we know the root causes, we can start to come up with solutions for those problems. And I think speaking to a lot of people throughout my life, indecisiveness is one of the biggest issues, surrounded by other issues like overthinking and stress. So what do you think are some of the root causes for people's inability to make good, effective decisions?
Okay, so the first one, in my opinion, is just too much choice. So for people who, let's say for example, you buy things from Amazon, a lot of people will go on Amazon, and this happens to myself too. They'll go on Amazon and they'll see 50 of the same product, roughly a different price slightly, all got 5-star ratings, all have more than 100 ratings, etc. And they're just like, which one do I choose? And they get a bit overwhelmed because the brand is slightly different, etc. And they just get confused. So that's one potential way where people get indecisive. Another way is because people don't know how to research, they don't know where to look. But I think to combat the Amazon situation, the easiest way is most of the time when you're buying something from Amazon, someone else has already bought a similar product. You use other people, delegate to other people to make it easier for yourself. So give me an example of the last thing you bought.
An SD card adapter.
Okay, so what was your process?
So this is probably not the best example, but I basically it was just I found my old phone, my old PSP, my old phone, my old gadgets, and I wanted to go through the memory cards, and I thought, okay, I need a SD card adapter because these aren't traditional cards that we use anymore. So yeah, I just went on Amazon, just typed it up, and just looked for the cheapest one. And right, you said
so that's your process. Some people just look for the absolute cheapest. Some people want the best, but they don't know where to go, etc. But let's say, for example, you already know that Adil's bought one. Adil's looking to buy one soon, based on our previous conversation before this started. So he could go on there, look for reviews, go to so many different YouTube videos, see what the differences are, etc., etc., etc. Or he could save himself so much time and energy and ask someone else who's already in the field, who knows what's best because they've already had the experience, and then buy that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So like delegating that task over and making it easier for yourself by just asking someone else with experience save you so much time, not just in business, but in your personal life too.
Just bouncing back off what you said, I'm one of those people, I like to go through that journey of finding out. I don't know what you two are like, but I feel like it's very important to look into the mind of people that are, like me personally, I'm one of those people, I don't really like going straight to someone sometimes. If I really want to know about something, I want to learn about it. For example, we're talking about cameras, right? Me, I go and watch loads of YouTube reviews. I don't just search online, I go and watch YouTube videos. For example, I bought a light bar recently. I went and watched people using the light bar and said, do I like the look of it? Do I like the way it works? Stuff like that. And I feel like so many people are different. I don't know if you've met so many people in your field as well. They just want to know how stuff works.
That's your process of elimination.
Yeah, but as long as you're not getting overwhelmed in that process,
Yes.
that's why this doesn't apply to you directly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's for the people who get overwhelmed. That's the problem.
Okay.
That's the way to solve that problem, if that makes sense. If they get overwhelmed.
All right. So you've mentioned basically having too many choices, and we solve that by having some kind of elimination process to reduce the choices we have, to narrow it down. Are there any other root causes to having indecisive issues?
Before I move on to you guys, because I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say as well. In terms of root causes, it's a load of information that people don't want to dissect through. So if you give me any difficult decision, people are not willing to actually put a deadline on finding the information. So let's say you want to get a home office. Let's say in your situation, you want to actually do all the research and everything else. You can do that, that's not a problem. But the second it takes over your life because you've got other things which are more important to do in business or in your job or everything else, then you've got to realize that it's actually a detriment. It's taking up all your energy that can actually be spent on other things which are more important.
Yeah.
So if you just make a snap decision from after doing the research and then choosing this is the date and the time that I'm going to make the decision by, you make that decision, and if it's wrong, like we said, you can always return and you've learned from it. But what would be the point of you then doing that for 3 times as long and then still making that same purchase and then realizing and then having to change it after? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just because there's so much information now that we have access to, in my opinion, as to why a majority of people are indecisive. And on the flip side to that, the reason why people are indecisive, in my opinion, is because they're scared. So whatever you can think of inside many decisions, whether it be social media, whether it be helping someone out or whatever, it comes down to status and it comes down to if you're scared.
Which restaurant to eat at?
Yeah, it's true. Well, you're obviously not scared to go to a restaurant.
So just to conclude, so we've mentioned too much choice, not enough information or lack of information, too much information, and the last one was, sorry, the one that you just mentioned.
I don't know myself.
I'm sure there was one more that you mentioned.
Too much information and then fear.
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 Is there any other root causes that you guys think that you can add on?
I'd say it's also down to not being in the position to constantly make decisions. A lot of people, especially in the majority of the world at the moment, people aren't in positions of power all the time. For example, some people may live alone. They don't have to constantly make decisions about certain things. Decisions are made for them. For example, students at schools, etc. They're told what class they've got to go to and which classroom it is. And then when they come out of university, they're flooded with, I've got to make so many decisions. They feel overwhelmed, like we're talking about.
Right.
So sometimes your decisiveness muscle in your brain isn't working. So you're just thinking, I've got all of these things, I don't know what to do. Let me go talk to someone, like Chris was saying. You find someone who does know. So I think not having to make enough decisions.
So that's kind of like a tendency thing. Like you've been built, or you have a bias.
I actually think it's to do with your mind.
Yeah.
Our brain has so many different muscles and different areas. If it's not being trained, that area of your brain is like, I don't know what's going on.
It is. So it's basically like a mental tendency. Like you have been brought up in a world where choices have been made for you. Now you've got these decisions to make. You
more
don't know how
muscle.
to make it.
Yeah.
More of a muscle.
It is.
It is definitely a skill that can be built.
Do you have anything
I
else?
have one. Have we touched up on overconfidence as making bad decisions?
No, we haven't.
Okay, so going off your fear one, I'd go opposite and say for someone that wears boots too big for their feet, and another analogy of that is thinking before you think before you speak and crawl before you walk. And I feel like if you're overconfident and a bit arrogant and your ego gets the better of yourself, you might make bad decisions because you're thinking too high or big of the situation. And we've spoken about cars all day today, so I might as well give another example. Imagine you buy a car because you want to look good in front of your friends, but you don't go to uni, so how would you see your friends? And you don't need to drive to your workplace, so you won't be using the car. So you're overconfident, you've bought something that you don't need to impress people that are not going to see it, with commuting to a job that you're not going to use to get there. So there is like an example of thinking too high of yourself.
Yeah.
So sometimes being too overconfident can lead to the wrong decision.
I think, do you know what that reminds me of? It's like overconfidence as a kid, especially, I don't know why this pops up to my head. It's like when something like we got to climb over a fence for whatever reason, ball goes up or whatever, and I'd be like, yeah, I could climb that gate. And I remember this one specific time, very, very embarrassing. It wasn't even like I had to climb the gate. It's a gate that opens. and I was like, you know what? I can jump this gate. So I tried to do like a Jackie Chan maneuver, 2 steps. And I get over the gate, but my hood of my jacket gets stuck on the spikes. And so I'm literally dangling off the gate in front of my cousins like an absolute clown.
You're lucky though. Something else going to get caught.
But yeah, that's literally what overconfidence can do. And adding to the list that you guys have already mentioned, I think another thing is perfectionists. Being a perfectionist isn't necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes, I know Adam's giving me them eyes, like this guy is one of them, but sometimes when you're a perfectionist, you make decisions for the small, minute details that really don't matter in the bigger picture. Like, if that thing is omitted or it's not noticed, it makes no difference. But you see some people sometimes, I think we all do it to some degree, but we put too much weight on these small, minor decisions. And I think that can sometimes lead to bad decisions.
Definitely.
And the other one is, coming off your point, the memory, the muscle that the brain is, confirmation bias. We make decisions based on information that we have soaked up throughout our entirety of our lifetime. This is how brands work, really and truly. Why do we go for Nike over Adidas? Why do we go for an Audi over a Toyota? It's because in our brains it's been built that these are the better brands. Why do you guys go for Apple and I go for Android? You guys don't.
Smart.
and that's one of the things, confirmation bias. Sometimes we make these impulse decisions based on this information at the back of our brain. We've not brought it to the front of our brain, processed it.
100%.
So I think just to conclude, I think it'd be nice to like draw upon everything that we've said. So I can't even remember everything. We had overconfidence, we had confirmation bias, we've had overconfidence, we've had fear, lack of knowledge, too much knowledge, and what was the first one that you mentioned? That's overwhelmed, too many choices. So I think those are the main causes, the main root causes of having an undecisive mind. So there might be more out there, but I think these are some of the main ones, if not the main ones.
I just wanted to add one little point to, you know how you mentioned perfection? Because there was this one thing that someone said that will always just stick in my mind from now on. And we went to a freshly grounded event. I don't know if you guys remember. It was way back when it was their first event. When we went to their event, one of my good friends was basically just like, just making sure like his box was on point, etc., his beard was on point, etc. And someone just came up to him in a very, very humble way, like he wasn't being disrespectful in any way, and he was just like, "Brother, perfection is from Allah."
Wow.
So, and he just finished everything. This is a fact.
He stopped touching his box.
No, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like
That's mad,
in his head, from now on, that's just cemented that yes, I'm a perfectionist. Yes, cool. I want everything to be perfect, but perfection only comes from Allah. Let me just do whatever I can. Let me stop worrying about all the little nitty gritty. Yes, it's important, but let me focus more on what actually matters.
I agree, man, 100%. I think it's quite detrimental, and it has been for me in some scenarios.
That's
it's
why
one
the
of the
deadline
things-
works.
Yeah.
That's why setting a deadline for yourself works. Sorry, bro.
No. I fully agree with that, man. So we've kind of covered these main root causes, and there's no point mentioning causes of problems if we don't cover the solutions. So, what solutions can you give off to someone who's maybe finding themselves suffering from these kind of root causes, these root issues? Like, what advice would you be able to give to them?
So I think I've mentioned a few, so I don't want to repeat myself. But
Just briefly, you can mention them again. So like process of elimination, that's one thing you can just mention.
Yeah, definitely. So process of elimination, making sure that once you know 50 to 70% that this is going to be fine, if that makes sense. Like once you have 50 to 70% of the knowledge that you think that you need, just make the decision and adjust as you go along. Set deadlines, always set deadlines if it's a big decision to make, no matter what it is. It's like, it's funny, but if I think back to like letting my parents know about wanting to get married, I had a deadline set. Otherwise, I was not going to do it because I just feel overwhelmed. I just feel like it's such a big decision. Like, I don't even chat to like, this is weird if my parents do see this, but like, I don't even chat to my parents about girls ever. So it's like me going down and saying, Dad, I want to get married. He's looked at me like,
Hey, you like girls?
Exactly. I never ever had that conversation ever. So it's like, if you don't set these deadlines and actually have someone to enforce them, if you need someone to enforce it for you, then that's a crucial part for me.
The number one thing I would say when it comes to decision making is having someone to reference, someone to go back to. Like,
I think so.
when you have a mentor, do you know how you have a mentor for different areas of your life? Having someone that you can kind of reference to or ask advice from helps with a decision. And because they know more than you, that's why you got them as a mentor. If you've got a mentor that doesn't know more than you, then that's a bit silly.
That's a problem.
That is a problem. But having that mentor is crucial. Because if you're going into a business and you don't have a mentor that kind of guides you or gives you advice, you're kind of looking into a dark tunnel without a flashlight. And I feel like it's very important.
100%.
Yeah. Something that's actually come up since you two have spoken now, because I said I didn't have one, because I didn't want to go too deep into something where someone's learned something already. But I don't know if you mentioned gut instinct. So going with what your gut tells you. Have you said that already?
Yeah.
So just to brush up on that, I would say make an easy decision over a hard one, especially about being overwhelmed. Try to go for a fail-proof sort of outcome. So know that whatever risk I'm taking right now, there's no fail to it. Like it's going to be 100%, and even if it doesn't work out, it's not going to be something that's going to sort of be detrimental for myself.
100%.
So
and
yeah, that
just
would be
weigh
my
out all
2
the
pence.
pros and cons.
Yeah.
Weigh out every single pro and con and just think, what is the worst case scenario? And 9 times out of 10, the worst case scenario is not even a big deal. So just take that leap of faith and just move forward with it. And the reality is that when you, like you said, if you do have the right people around you, and it costs a little bit of money sometimes to get the right people around you, but regardless, if it's going to save you so much time and effort, then that's what matters.
It's going to cost me to buy friends. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to buy some friends.
To have the right phone calls, yeah, because like you guys know this individual called Seamus, right? And he said something very, very interesting to me yesterday, which was that you can get all of the normal decisions from speaking to your best mates. You can speak to someone else who has a little bit more knowledge than you and be able to actually grow a little bit. But to actually have the big boy decisions done, you need to speak to people who are big boys.
Yeah.
Right or wrong.
I agree.
So you have to speak to the people who are at the top of their game, and if they're at the top of their game, they're most likely not your friend.
That's why I was speaking to you today about decisiveness.
Hey, next time you want a phone call with this one, it's going to be a dial charge. Please input your bank details.
Some automated voice in it. I've got a list here of some solutions, and alhamdulillah, like you guys have mentioned pretty much most of them, if not all of them. So the first one is realizing the difference between reactions and decisions. So basically this is trying to say is don't make your decisions based off like emotions only. Don't base decisions on just what's going on in your heart. Always consult your mind and the people around you, like you were saying. You mentioned choices through elimination, narrowing down your choices. You mentioned trust your gut feeling. Your gut feeling, I think we underestimate it sometimes because it's so powerful. Like there's been times where everyone's ignored their gut feeling and they regretted it in the future.
Yeah, that's a really bad experience.
Again, you guys mentioned consult experience, whether that's a mentor or a knowledgeable friend, your parents, whoever it may be. This is looking at the bigger picture. I think you touched upon this when you talked about the perfectionist. The next one is trusting in our Lord. Always asking Allah for guidance. And we're going to go into this a bit deeper in a moment. But the reason why we bring this up is because I was saying to you guys earlier when we were planning this show, we can do all the research in the world. We can ask the most knowledgeable people in the world and we can make the most sound, most informed decision. But with everything in life, there is always an unknown element. And that's where the faith and the belief comes in with our Lord. And with that faith and that belief is that, okay, I've made this decision. This is the optimal outcome that I would like. But if it doesn't happen, because I have this faith, I will be happy and content with whatever outcome does happen. Because there will be some good that there is there for us to find. And I think for me, like I've implemented this last one the most in my life very recently. Because before that, I would find myself going into that dark hole of, why me? Why has this happened? I made the best decision. I asked everyone. I did everything right. And it still didn't turn out like how I wanted it to be. And once you have that belief that there's always good in everything and you believe in your Lord, then I swear it makes a world of a difference in your life. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, I can only begin to describe how much has changed my life. And I can only implore people to try and take that away with them, to have some kind of belief system, and you yourself will see how much it impacts your life. And I'm sure you guys have been down a similar route or similar journey in your life as well. So like I'm so glad like we've covered a lot of ground today, a lot more than I thought we would have. Like we've talked about root causes, we've talked about a lot of solutions, we've talked about personal experiences. And we've learned a lot from you today, Rizwan. But I think it would be best for us to also reflect back on people of the past, looking back at our religion, what it teaches us, because at the end of the day, the greatest knowledge in this world is the divine knowledge. So I don't know if you guys have brought anything that you'd like to share with me.
Yeah.
And
I've got story time for you guys.
Okay, let's go. I'm ready. I've got the milk and cookies ready.
I'm going to tell you that. So there was a sergeant in a war, and this sergeant was leading his battalion, his troops, into this one field that they had to go into and fight the opposition. Now, what the sergeant didn't take into consideration was that at any moment into this field that they go, there's 3 different hills. And with those hills, there could be troops hiding behind, ready to just come down and take them all out. So what this sergeant did is he looked at this field from a distance with his periscope or telescope? His telescope, yeah.
Imagine it, submarine, yeah.
So with his telescope, he was looking into the field and he saw, I'm not going to take my battalion and my troops down there. So he had a decision to make. He was saying, am I going to take and lead these 300 men into this field, or am I going to find a solution? And very quickly, he had to make that decision, snap decision. So he said, troops, we're instead, rather than going into this field over here, we're going to go over the hills from the back. And the other hills can't see where we're going. So he took them around the back and they won the war. But what's really important about this story is sometimes we look too much into the square rather than outside the box. And you've got to sometimes look around you and take into consideration what other things can happen. So the message to take away from the story is you don't always have to look at something straight down, tunnel vision. What you can do instead is look at the outside point of views, perspectives, different viewpoints. And what I mean by this perspective and viewpoint is people who are not having to make that emotional decision about your personal situation. Maybe people that can look at it from a wider perspective or point of view because it doesn't emotionally distress them or it doesn't affect their life. So yeah, what the soldier did is go around the hill, other people can't see, and he managed to save 300 lives.
Look for alternatives, because when you look at things at a linear perspective, you miss out on all the other things. So yeah, definitely think outside the box. Completely agree with that one.
That's good, man. Just to add to that as well, like, how you were mentioning, you didn't really mention specifically to ask someone else because you didn't ask someone else, but it just reminded me of something where most of us, I don't know if you guys do this, but I used to do this, where I'd ask someone a question, but while I'm asking them a question, I'd tell them what my opinion is. But you shouldn't be doing that. If you're asking for someone's opinion, you should say it without asking their opinion whatsoever. And if you're really brave, you should go on the opposite side of what you think and see if they actually come back to the way that you are thinking of doing. Because that way you'll get their honest, true reflection and you'll get both sides of whatever the argument is before you make your decision.
I like that. I actually like that.
That's a good idea, that. So that's basically going against yourself to see...
While you're explaining it to them. So then if the thing is, they're not being fake with you if they do side with that side, and then when you tell them the other direction, then because they might have just not seen that perspective, but at least that way they've seen both perspectives. That's I think you saying the word perspective reminded me.
Good. Shall I go into a hadith?
Yeah, sure.
So there is a hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Amr. He had said that the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, said that the hearts are vessels and some are greater capacity than others. When you ask from the Almighty, O people, then ask him while you are convinced he will answer. Verily Allah does not answer the supplication of a servant from behind an unmindful heart. The source is Musnad Ahmad 6655. So what I can take back from that, and I can repeat it again if you guys didn't catch up on it, but it's having conviction in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that you as an individual have a decision foremost. So like trusting that Allah will make the decision for you makes you a decisive person. What have you guys taken back from that?
Bro, the reality is that out of all the decisions I've made, it's so difficult to even think of one which I regret, because you do it from what's best for you, and at the same time Allah then guides the rest of you, if that makes sense. So as long as you just carry on making the decisions rather than just procrastinating and wasting time and energy, the rest will just fall into place, and I truly believe in that.
I mean, I was just going to draw upon a Quranic ayah which nicely adds on to that and goes off one of the points I mentioned earlier. So in the Quran, chapter 3, verse 159, our Lord says, "And when you have decided, then rely upon Allah. Indeed, Allah loves those who rely upon Him." And I think this verse kind of sums it up all very, very beautifully. Puts in a nice little parcel for us to take away. Because he starts the ayah by saying, once you have decided, then rely on Him. So he's not saying, when you've got a decision, first thing, come pray to me. He's saying, do your work. Do your research. Ask the people around you. Learn what you need to learn. Then once you have decided, then I will do the rest.
That's beautiful.
Or we can go to the other side of things. If you have done all of that and you're still undecisive, then you can rely on that point as well. And he also says that he loves those who rely upon him. Like, if you can imagine yourself, this is just like demonstrating the love that our Lord has for us, the compassion and mercy. We as humans, we're so impatient, yeah? If someone comes to you and they're constantly relying on you, you need to sort this out for me, we get annoyed. Like, why are you coming to me? Sort it out yourself, yeah? And our Lord, He's like to us, you're relying on me to help you with this decision, make sure the outcome is best for you. I think for me, that is the most beautiful thing ever. And for me, it puts satisfaction in my heart, knowing that as long as I have faith and I have belief and I have that reliance on my Lord, that no matter what decision I've made, as long as I've done my work behind it as well, that there is going to be sustenance at the end of that decision.
Something just popped into my head.
Same.
It was a meme actually. But the meme said, imagine you're one decision away from a completely different life. And it gets you just thinking, could I be a completely different person if I made a different decision? Or all the decisions I made leading up to this point are giving me this life.
It's insane.
I'm going deep like
It's
essay.
micro. It's micro. Yeah, it's
But
micro.
it's very true that you could have made one decision and you could have had a completely different life.
Definitely.
But you should have pleasure in knowing that God's already planned out like 1 million different lives for you to live based on every decision.
That you make.
But each of them, you can always lead you to the one final destination you really want.
Definitely. Touching back on that tawakkul that you mentioned there, I remember when I went Umrah in Ramadan 2017, and one of my friends called Bashir, he told me a dua that like always stuck with me since then. He said to me, make a dua to Allah that whatever is good for you, may Allah give it to you and keep it with you, and whatever's bad for you, remove it from your sight. And it's very basic and cliche, but it's actually a dua that has helped me a lot, because like think about it really and truly, anything that's going to come in your way, whether it's a new client, whether it's a car you're going to get, whether you're getting married, you're going to make that dua. Like, if it's not for me, take it away from me.
It takes courage to even
It
make
takes
that
courage
dua.
to make that dua, because you just want to, like, we're all about sunshine and rainbows sometimes. Like, no, I just want everything to be happy and good and lollipops. But then you got the other side of it. Yeah, the sweets and lollipops. But on the other side of it, it's like, if it's not good for me, I'd rather it be taken away from me before I get it.
Do you know the thing is, I think people always say, oh, what if this is like something bad happens, and you're always like, what if this is bad for me? What if this is bad for me? But sometimes things look good on the surface. Why do we never think, okay, what if this is bad what if this is bad for me? It's always like, oh, this looks good, this is best for me. It's like, that's why we need to have that faith. This is why we need to pray, because something might seem perfect for us, but at the end of the day, we don't know. We don't know what's good and we don't know what's bad. And we just have to do our utmost best as human beings. And you know what? I'm lost for words. I'm just hearing everything that you guys are saying, and I'm just flooded with so much like inspiration and knowledge.
I think we need to ask Rizwan for his one-liner.
Yeah. So as we do with all our shows, we're gonna go around the room and we're gonna ask everyone for their closing remarks. So what we do is we go around the room and we ask everyone for their closing remarks. And usually with our closing remarks, it's usually just a one-liner. We say one-liner, but sometimes it can go on. And it's basically, what one piece of advice would you give for the end of today for our viewers and listeners?
So it's probably not one line, but
that's what I said.
It never is.
It never is.
I promise. When you're gonna make a decision, weigh out the pros and cons, set a deadline, and no matter what, ask yourself the question: will I regret this on my deathbed? If the answer is yes, then obviously don't do it. If the answer is no, then do it. If the answer is it doesn't really matter, then make the decision anyway. Because if you're going to think, when you're on your deathbed, if you're going to think, well, that's a trivial thing to think about anyway, then why are you already wasting so much time on it? Why do you even need to think about asking yourself that question? So that's kind of how I kind of live my life, if that makes sense, in terms of making decisions.
I'll go next then. A good decision avoids the result of total self-destruction. And if you make bad decisions, you'll turn into a punching bag of countless errors and mistakes, which can waste time, energy, and money.
Is that your
That's like a little poem. Mine wrote a poem.
I had to memorize that.
Adam?
Life's too short to be fussing over the small things. If something's important enough for you to make a decision on it, go find someone that knows how to make the decision. If it's that big, because if you're not really needing someone else, then you can make the decision yourself and take the mistake as it is anyway.
What I would say is, some of the best decisions I've made is because I've been able to adapt. I've been able to know when it's time to switch from an objective perspective and a subjective perspective. And also, one thing that's helped me so much is the ability to detach myself from a situation emotionally. You see, when you detach yourself, it's a very, very hard thing to do. When you detach yourself from something emotionally, you start to think of things in the most logical manner, and you look out for everyone's interest, not just your own. And it allows you to make some very, very informed, effective, and efficient decisions, as you were saying right at the start, Rizwan.